played around with and experimented a lot in games. And what I mean by that is very often video games pander to movies, and movies are almost always realistic or are based in realism. And games kind of follow that same pattern. And I wish they didn't. I wish games played more like live theater, where you were getting things like anti-realism, you're getting things like naturalism, you're getting things like absurdism, all of the isms, right? And I wish games would follow that more, because Alan Wake plays with anti-realism a lot. And it was the most interesting thing about it to me, about Alan Wake 2, was that, and that continues here in Alan Wake 1. The most interesting thing about it is how it plays with thematic genre being anti-realism. Phil, Kingdom Hearts does the same thing, but with absurdism. You know, Kingdom Hearts is an absurdist piece until the Disney worlds get introduced. And I think that makes it so fascinating. There's another example I had recently, but I can't recall it at this moment. Something to do closer to naturalism.
For those that might not know, though, kind of slightly define these things.
Okay, yeah, so, like, realism is based in the idea, not that, like, there's, like, unrealistic things happening, like magic and dragons. Magic and dragons can still take place in realism. Realism is where characters act and react in what you would consider real ways. So, like, they seem like fully fleshed out real people who are reacting in that way. Anti-realism and a little bit naturalism kind of play into it's more impressionist. It's more, we're not explaining things. Characters may not act normally in certain cases. Characters may be living embodiments of metaphors in certain cases. And then absurdism is intentionally nothing makes sense, and it's 100% supposed to be what you personally take from it. The most popular absurdist piece probably of all time is Waiting for Godot, and there is a it's not Broadway, I think it's a London theater recording of Waiting for Godot on YouTube. I 100% recommend a watch of that. It doesn't make sense. It's not supposed to make sense. But it's one of just the most fascinating pieces of art that you could ever watch, hands down.
This has nothing to do with the game, but going off of like what you're talking about with this, what was the term? I'm sorry.
Absurdism?
Absurdism? Is that what it is?
For which part?
No, what you called Waiting for Godot? Is it?
Oh, it's absurdism.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, you ever heard of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead?
Yeah, I've heard of it. I've not
Dude,
seen it.
Highly recommend watching that.
Okay.
It's based off of, Hamlet's friends from Hamlet.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's fucking, what's the actors' names? They're escaping me. But Commissioner Gordon from Dark Knight.
Oh, okay,
Gary Oldman and Abomination from Incredible Hulk.
Oh God, I couldn't.
Yeah.
Lie to me, guy.
Yeah. They are Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, but they don't say who's who. So, like, at some point, it plays with the idea that they're in a play, but they don't know that they're in a play, and then they start to realize that they are in a play, and that they don't know why they're doing the things that they're doing, and it doesn't make sense why they're doing the things they're doing. And at some point, they're like, "Who am I? Who are you?" And then, like,
interesting.
There's a really good sequence where they play they call it questions, and it's like they're playing tennis.
Okay.
And so the game is to ask a question, but not give us a statement. You have to keep asking questions without repeating, and it has to, like, kind of not necessarily make sense. But if one of them says a statement, they say 15 love or
interesting.
And it's a great sequence where they play questions.
Bringing it back to Alan Wake. The best part about this game is its narrative and how it plays with thematic genre. And everything it's doing just kind of as a piece of art. I think it tells a very clear story here, and then hides it under the guise of anti-realism and impressionism in that. And we can get kind of into that a little later, but the story it tells is super dark and very, very, very bleak and pessimistic. But much like how the gameplay works, there's rays of hope spread throughout it. You know,
I hate you.
I mean, it's there, right?
Yeah.
So I It's a game that will stick in my mind, much like how the second one did. But I think the second one's much better. It's a game that will stick in my mind, and I will think about it for so long. It's really left a really big impression on me. It's just that the game around these elements is bad. It starts off very, very interesting. The idea of this is a third-person shooter game with heavy survival horror influences on it, but I hesitate to kind of call it survival horror. Like
it's not.
Yeah, it's really like, which one's me? Fucking,
we're already on.
There we go. There we go. I wanted this one where you guys are on.
Gotcha.
It's not like, it doesn't like lean in super hard into survival horror, but it's got that kind of tone of survival horror in it. And I found the gameplay mechanics of it, of using the flashlight to sort of de-shield enemies first and then doing damage with a handgun or with just a firearm, really, really fascinating. Of course, I've played Alan Wake 2, so that's the same gist in that. But what makes this one even more unique is how they then apply that to the control scheme, having the flashlight be your L2 or your left trigger and the shooting being your right trigger, I think is like really, really cool. From a pitch perspective, but then you get into it, and the deeper the gameplay goes, it really just shows you just how shallow that gameplay loop is, and how they just do not evolve from it at all. What you play in hour 1 is pretty much what you're going to be playing in the final hours as well. There's a couple of small things that they do change, but overall, it's just the same thing again and again and again. And I think that repetition kind of ruins what the art is trying to say in it. And I have a similar critique with 2 as well, but not as much. 2 knows when to rein it in. 1 is constantly monster closet after monster closet after monster closet, just throwing mobs at you all the time. They all behave the same way. Even when the game gets a little more unique and starts throwing inanimate objects at you, they behave exactly how the dudes with axes behave. And it's just so frustrating that it's constantly just these enemy NPCs bombarding you again and again and again, and your only choice is to fight them. I tried running away. It sometimes works, but very often these enemies are faster than you and will outrun you, and Alan Wake will run out of stamina trying to get away, and then the dodge is okay. It's not great, and that's kind of how I would describe game feel in general in this game. It feels okay to play, but it does not feel great to play.
Would you say it's the dodge is better than what was that Dead Space? Like, it was aping all like the stuff from Dead Space. It came out last year.
Callisto Protocol?
Callisto Protocol. Or maybe
it came out 2 years ago.
Yeah, the year before.
Callisto Protocol functions very differently.
I'm talking about the dodge specifically.
Yeah, I know. Even in the dodge, it functions
okay.
very, very differently.
Gotcha.
It's not like a button dodge. It's a hold left and right on the stick, like Punch Out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That feels better, but it's 21 years older, so I would expect it to feel better.
Fair.
That's not true. 11 years older. Anyways, regardless.
21, yeah, it's a little too much.
Yeah, a little too much. And this level design is not great. It's very repetitive, and the signposting specifically is awful.
I was getting lost constantly.
Constantly getting lost.
Yeah.
Now, granted, the levels aren't super big enough to where like you're going to be lost for very long, but it's constantly like you never feel like you're going the right way. And I have a huge problem with enemy encounters and encounter scenarios. It's just way too repetitive, and it is so annoying every time I get a critical dodge that it jumps into its cinematic mode, or every time enemies spawn, it jumps into that cinematic camera mode and slows everything down, or every time I get a final kill, it does it again. It's just grating and annoying, and it's especially annoying when enemies spawn in, and it does it because they always spawn in exactly the same. There's 2 guys in front of me, there's 1 guy behind me. Awesome. I can't wait for the next one to happen. And they're all going to charge me all at the same time. None of them are going to try and dodge bullets. None of them are going to try and like flank around me. They're just going to come straight at me every single motherfucking time.
Awesome.
You will, there are too many encounters. There are too many enemies per encounter. The game isn't difficult, but it's just this never-ending swarm of enemies rushing you to where like you're gonna die. And it's not anything that you as a player are necessarily doing wrong. It's just the fact that of like, okay, I just have to, I guess, change my tactic this time. And tactic I use loosely. It's more of like I'm going to start running backwards sooner, as opposed to waiting for a little bit longer in that. The game is missing any type of progression, player or character progression at all, I would say.
You don't really feel yourself getting stronger.
Restarting Alan Wake every level to having nothing again is such a mistake. Yeah. Not every level, but it does it a lot, right? Sometimes it does it in the middle of a level. Taking the flashlight away constantly is a mistake. Taking your guns away constantly is a mistake. It leaves you feeling frustrated that I was just popping off, shooting flare guns, shooting shotguns or hunting rifles, or I had so many bullets in my pistol. I was using this great flashlight and then restarting you again and again and again. It feels like the game is just restarting mechanically every single level.
It feels like a cheap way of making you feel more helpless.
Yeah, and it just doesn't work.
Which, like, you know,
it's just annoying.
You kind of want that from some horror games, to like have that helpless feeling, because you like if you want to get scared, right?
No, you want it in horror games, but this game's not a horror game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this game is an action game. Action thriller, sure. Yeah, if you want to get more specific in it, but it's an action game, and it just doesn't ever feel good to play. Is your mic muted?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind. And so yeah, I love what Alan Wake.
It's okay.
I love what Alan Wake has to say. I never want to play Alan Wake ever again.